Thanks very much to everyone today for being here. I'm Dr. Lana, and I'm a senior lecturer in strategic management at Cardiff Met University. Thanks very much for the opportunity to be part of this excellent conference. It's been a pleasure working with Professor Eluned Griffith-Jones, examining the doctorate viva for Dr. Millard Jones. And this subject is very important because we're in a very important year politically for the Welsh language. 2025 is a year of celebrating 10 years of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, Wales. And it's also 25 years away from the target to achieve 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. This topic is important and close to my heart, with my doctorate looking at how sporting communities can promote increased use of the Welsh language outside of the school gates. And that was funded by the Coleg Cymraeg Cenedlaethol Ieithoedd, so thanks very much to them as well. And also I was brought up in an English-speaking family and was educated through the medium of Welsh. And sport has been central to my life every day and since I was very young. Normalising the language is very important to keeping the language alive and also one that is used on a daily basis and also socially. This is why sport is unique, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all and hearing from you all about how language use that you've seen in your areas has developed. So I'm looking forward very much to speaking with the three of you. On this panel, all speakers will speak individually on their topics and they will present individually as I introduce them as well. I'll start with Ffion, then with Oihan, and then going on to Penny. And after the three of them have presented, we will open it up to the floor for questions for them. So, Ffion. Ffion Eluned Owen is originally from Croeso in Vale and is now living in Cardiff. She is she's a regular member of the Red Wall and loves following national Welsh football teams in all parts of the world. She can be seen and heard regularly on the media, discussing football and enjoying working and commentating on main Welsh games on the weekends. She was the editor of the book Y Walgoch ar ben y byd to celebrate reaching the World Cup in Qatar, and recently she presented a documentary series yn Holi Chwarae, The Right to Play, tracing the history of female football in Wales. Beyond football, she has a doctorate and an interest in cultural literary history of the slate industry areas. She works to promote the Welsh language in her daily job. Welcome, Ffion. Ffion, you follow Wales across the world as a fan, a football fan, and you've been doing so for years now. You've edited a book on the experience of being part of the Red Wall and have also presented a documentary on the history of women's football in Wales. You commentate on games, you discuss football regularly on the media. What, therefore, is your experience of the use of the Welsh language by supporters and in the community in relation to football, and have there been any changes in recent years? Thank you. Thanks very much, Lana. Yes, I basically like football, so that's why I'm here. I don't know whether I'm able to move the slides, yes? So yes, that's quite big, isn't it? So yes, thanks for those words of welcome, and thanks very much for the invitation, really, to be here speaking to you today. I was asked, are you interested in talking about football and the Welsh language? Obviously, there was only going to be one answer to that. So as Lana said, I do work on a daily basis on Welsh as a subject, but I'm also a football fan. I'm here in a personal capacity today as well, mainly. But obviously, on some occasions, both things go together hand in hand, as you can imagine. So yes, I'm a supporter, first of all. In terms of Wales, as Lana said, I come from the Vale in Gwynedd, about 5 miles outside of Caernarfon, a village called Croeso, an area in the northwest where football is very big. And there's a team in every village. My father was also a manager of the Llanrug football team, which is the village known as the most Welsh-speaking village in Wales, apparently. And he was manager of that football team in the village for 10 years after having played himself. So yes, there's a lot of football in our family. And if I'm right, the photo that my sister will hate me for putting up there, the top photo. I was looking last night, that was exactly 20 years ago, March 2005, Wales and Austria at the Millennium Stadium. And I'm so happy that we no longer have the daffodil hat. So one of the games, and I was very fortunate, for those of you who don't know the geography of Wales, Croeso is 4 hours from Cardiff. So I was off. My mother brought us down a couple of times. I'm very grateful to her for bringing us down. It's not easy, as we've heard this morning when Ian was speaking. It's not easy. I have so much respect. I haven't lived in North Wales since 2009. I have so much respect for Welsh supporters who come back down, and I live in South Wales, so it's much easier for me now. So one of those first games, losing 2-0 against Austria. And then, yes, I've always had that interest in football. Never really played, although I play all sorts of other sports, which raises other questions about why I didn't play football. Maybe I'd hope if I was in school today, things would be different. But yes, just that big interest. I did play Wembley lunchtime, but just that interest in football. I followed Man United at the time, taking cuttings at the Daily Post, that kind of interest. Just a huge fan. Coming down at 7 a.m. to watch Match of the Day on a Sunday morning because I couldn't watch it. It was too late for me to watch it at 10 p.m. on a Saturday. So yes, just Wales. I'm fortunate then, going to university, falling into a crowd of boys mainly, who were also very fond of football. Starting then to go down to Cardiff. I was at Aberystwyth University and starting then to go down to Wales games. And my partner and the group of boys starting to go on Wales away trips. And I'm just going to talk briefly about my experiences in terms of the language, in terms of Welsh supporters, maybe on away trips mainly. And my first Wales away trip was in Sweden, so that's the first photo there. That was the year of the Euros 2016. I'll share a secret with you. I wasn't allowed to go before then because the boys were starting to go, but they didn't want one girl with them. What group of boys, 22-year-old boys who just finished university would want to take one girl abroad with them? So it took me a couple of years to get my foot in. Maybe now people don't go themselves either. I have been on some trips alone, but I've been very lucky to be allowed to go. As I said, there are groups of girls that we've been as well. And a couple of them before COVID, they go to one every year. But there are girls I've got to know, of course, by following Wales. I mainly travelled with the boys though. We're going to Macedonia tomorrow after the game, 13 of us, so 12 boys and me. So that will be my 40th trip watching Wales away since 2016 in 9 years. So it's quite addictive. I'm lucky as well that I've come to an age where I'm able to watch when Wales were starting to play well as a national team. I've been to 2 Euros finals, 2016, and I was also fortunate enough to be one of the 200 who were in Baku for 2021 as well, and that was one of my favourite trips away. And then obviously having been to the World Cup as well, and I will be going to the Euros in Switzerland to watch the girls, so I'm just very fortunate in one way that I've come to an age where I can go on trips when Wales were also doing well. And of course the World Cup is there in one of the photos. And football as well. As I said, I haven't played, but I've been fortunate enough over the years. As Lana said, I have an interest in writing. I have a doctorate, which has nothing to do with football. If you want to know something about the Vale and quarries, then you can ask me as well. But as I said, I've presented the documentary Yr Hawl i Chwarae, The Right to Play, on the history of women's football before Christmas. Tim edited a book before the Euros, and I contributed to that. That was one of the first things I did in terms of contributing to a book on experiences in the Euro 2016 Euros and Qatar World Cup. Then I was a joint editor of my book, The Walgoch, The Red Wall, and in recent years things have developed where I'm commentating and working on the Premier League Wales games in Wales, and also commentating on the Janiro main women's league. So it's outside of my comfort zone, but I do enjoy hugely in terms of working on that and writing articles as well. I did have a copy, I've forgotten to bring it with me, but I write articles again in Welsh. So does anyone know about this? There's a fanzine in Wales, Alternative Wales. They've just relaunched it. It's a new look fanzine, so that's something that crystallises what it's like to be a Red Wall supporter in the current times. And they've just relaunched it, and I've been writing a regular Welsh language column for that, and I wrote the first column. It's just been published last week on our trip to Italy to watch the girls last month. And the first cap from Mae'r Griffiths was a young girl from Defnydd, plays for Man United, and she came on for a first cap. So all of these things are happening through the medium of Welsh. So I found that I'm able to, although I didn't play football, I'm able to be involved in the football world in a different way. And I'm just going to show a video, hopefully, and to talk a little bit more about the Red Wall, the book The Red Wall, that I edited to celebrate that we had got to Qatar and the first World Cup since 1958. There's language, there's fun everywhere, and in one game there's a song for the whole of Wales. We're still here. Our language on the field is a project, a thrilling project.
Gareth Bale kicks a ball like he's watching it come down the stairs, slow motion in a gown. Gareth Bale kicks a ball like he can't fight this feeling anymore. And he's forgotten when he started fighting before, and it's time to bring the ship into the shore and throw away the oars forever.
In the stands, looking forward, the words testify that you have to wait for good things in the depth of night, with no one answering the prayer. This is an hour for us to qualify. Our punishment ended, we will go fearless to succeed in the world. So that was a video we produced to promote the book. I'm sure a few of you will know many faces there. And when we put this book together, we wanted it to reflect that sense that we were getting from being a Welsh supporter. Because it's no exaggeration to say that I found my people, found my tribe, so to speak, because there's a special feeling. If you ask anyone who travels, there are a couple of people in the audience who've been doing this for years and decades before me, and I'm sure they will share that sense that I have. That it's just something special that we go. It's about 4 months now since we were last on a trip, and we're going, and we meet every now and then. Lots of new people, and that feeling of celebrating our Welshness and being with people who think the same as me about Wales, want to be there because we love Wales. And that's what I wanted to reflect in this book, especially in that clip you saw, the poems that had been commissioned. It was a book including experiences. I wanted a variety of experiences. There were poems, there were quotations, there were photos, there were articles. So they're all short pieces, but so many different pieces contributing, because that is what being a Welsh supporter means. I feel that there are so many different people from different backgrounds And I've got to know people from other areas in Wales and beyond. There are lots of Wales supporters who don't live in Wales either, but they are still connected through supporting Wales. And a core part of it all is the language. And the words Rhys produced in England, a poem in strict meter saying that there's a language, and that's what it is. I don't think maybe I could engage as much with it if the language wasn't there. Because yes, there are a lot of football supporters for historical reasons, and how the game comes from the north, and especially on away trips. There's more of a percentage of Welsh speakers than would be in a normal situation based on the population of Wales. But what it gives as well, people, new speakers, learners, and that's what sticks with me, because there are people who have contributed to the book, who have been following Wales since the 70s, 80s. There are people who have just started following. There are new speakers. There are bilingual elements. There are 2 chapters that I've kept in the original English because I want to reflect it is a bilingual space. That's what's nice about it. And there's a mutual respect there. And there are quotations, I've kept them in the original language. Yes, I've forgotten whether, but yes, I think everyone from Wales as well. There's focus to where people come from, and supporters come from all areas and reflect Wales as it really is, maybe. Because, as I say, I meet people, I make friends with people. Apart from following Wales, I probably wouldn't have come across them because of the types of completely Welsh life I live otherwise. And I think there are photos in it, an opportunity for people to contribute their own quotes. I don't think my family will mind that I've picked up someone who doesn't speak Welsh. Similar outlooks on life in terms of music, politics, and respect for a beautiful language of Cymraeg. So I see that a lot. The respect that supporters have for language, whether they can speak one word, a few sentences, or that they're speaking Welsh all the time like me. There are a lot of occasions, I think. If anyone's read Bryn Law's book after the Euro 2016, we as a group of friends get mentioned in the last chapter because he saw us at that game, the last game in Lyon, and we were in the back room in a pub, and Welsh and English being spoken quite naturally between us, and there were some parts when there was Welsh being spoken, but that is how I see it in terms of language, that influence it can have on people as well. So many times in trips, I've had young boys quite often telling me they get it, they don't speak Welsh, because maybe where they've been brought up, which school they attended, it can be a postcode lottery, as we know, and they get it that, I think about Euros 2021 in Baku, when a boy who actually comes from the northwest said, "This is the most Welsh I've ever spoken in a week." I think he went to an English stream in school, but he speaks Welsh naturally, but that's the most Welsh he'd ever spoken. Other people asking me, just speak Welsh to me when you see me on Wales Away, because I want to use that opportunity to practice, to increase my confidence, and I feel it's a safe space to do so. I was in Brussels 2 or 3 years ago, and a group of young boys again, non-Welsh speaking, in their 20s, wanting to know, asking us what the words to the song Hogiau Ni. There's a song Hogiau Ni about football fans. They wanted to know. They didn't speak Welsh, but they would hear other football supporters singing it, and it's one of the songs we sing on the squares of Europe. And they wanted to know what the words meant and what they were, so that they could sing it. So just organic things, natural things like that. And even older people then. First trip in Sweden, the older people I made friends with from Newport in their 50s, 60s, I remember asking them afterwards, "What's your view about the Welsh language?" And they tell me, well, 10 years ago I would have said that it's a waste of time. But after seeing that there are actually people like you using it, I don't think the same way now. So that mindset, football has made people realise and notice as well that the language has changed their mindsets because of that. There's one article or one chapter in the book. I'm sure Greg won't mind me naming him. Greg is from Saundersfoot in south of Pembrokeshire. And he's learned Welsh. He's a new speaker. It's again a lot of it because of football and the football world that we live in. And obviously he talks a lot about his identity as someone who comes from under the landscape. If you know about the geography of Pembrokeshire, with South being more English speaking, because when he was young, football was more about English, whereas rugby was more Welsh. So football was seen as something very English, but when he started following Wales, he's found out what he thought he was going to find through rugby, which is a space to be Welsh in his own way. And because of that, he started learning the language, speaking the language, he uses it. And I think he says here that it gives confidence to first language speakers, that they become more prominent, they don't have to hide. Going back, maybe that's been an issue. But for people like him, who are second language speakers, they have pride in the Welsh language and feel an ownership over the language, whatever their language ability is, and maybe that hadn't been true previously. So I'm very proud of the book because it does hopefully reflect, yes, the bilingualism, but also how influential and what impact the Welsh language has among supporters when we do come together. And we've talked a lot this morning about the virtual world when we're not together. And yes, I'm currently working on another book, so just on the women. So it's a factual book on women's football. Going to Switzerland. This is in Welsh. There are lots of things being published in Welsh on football. I've done this with the Gwasgalfa Press, and again, Hannah James, Gary Jones, Mary Griffiths, Welsh speakers in the squad have contributed, and I'll be using them as role models as well. So yes, to answer your question, it's a little bit anecdotally there, but I think I hope I've given you a flavour of what I experience as a fan, surrounded by fans, and not just it's actually all true. So yes, I'm looking forward to going to Macedonia. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Ffion. There are lots of really substantial things that have come out of that presentation. I'm looking forward to picking your brains a bit more on all of that. And I've also taken a photo of a couple of things I'll ask you about as well. So we will go on to Oihan.
Nawn ni ymlaen at Owen. So Owen currently works as an advisor on Basque and communication at the cooperative Eluned, and has experience in designing and implementing Basque plans in associations, companies and public administrations. In recent years, he has worked in the field of sport to promote the Basque language in clubs and federations, developing methodologies and interventions to increase the use of the Basque language within youngsters, coaches and club members. He has worked on collaborative projects to share experience and knowledge in the promotion of minority languages in Wales, Catalonia and Ffion. He has a degree in law from EHU UPV and a postgraduate degree in social linguistics and communication. He's worked in the Basque Association Garabid, as coordinator of linguistic cooperation projects in Colombia, Yucatan, sorry, Yucatan, Mexico, and Ecuador. With the, sorry, you please, just Quechua, Nasa,
Embera, or Yucatecan Maya.
Maya language communities. Very interesting. He has worked in different cooperatives of the Basque cooperative movement, such as Faga Group and Lab or Cuxa. So sorry for my Basque here. Ongi a Tori Galasera. Well, Croeso I Gymru, welcome to Wales. My first go. Oihan, you're from the Basque Country. We know that there are demographic similarities between Wales and the Basque Country. About the same number in population, 3 million, and about the same number and percentage of us speakers in our languages. And both Welsh and Basques are very different from English, Spanish and French in your case. We also share a love of football. And so what I would love to hear about is a little bit about the initiatives that you have been taking place to increase the use of Basque at community level with children and young people, and also perhaps a little bit about the relationship between the use of the community level language and the use at the higher levels as well, and or with the role models at professional clubs. Sorry, lots of things to get in.
I will try to do some of it.
Diolch.
Okay, diolch. Bore da, wel. Chymunedau and Diolch for inviting us. Well, I'm not representing any football club, but I will share our experience with those football clubs I represent this cooperative, Emon. This is an organization founded in 1997, mainly working in language management, language activism, but nowadays we work in gender equality, innovation, social innovation, diversity, social responsibility. I mean, we normally work, our centered topic is Basque language, but then with other social issues. We're 90 members in total. These are some of my colleagues. And well, the idea is that our experience during almost these 30 years has been mainly in the socio-economic sphere, in the working places, like revitalizing the Basque language, the use and the presence of the Basque language in the working places. But we do also work with educational organizations, culture, sports, because in the end we consider and we realize that in terms of revitalizing a minoritized language is, let's say, all the same. Like, well, obviously you have to adapt it to the context of the organization, of the field, of whatever it is. But in a sense, and as we will see, well, this is what you said, like we can reflect ourselves in the same mirror, Welsh and Basques, in numbers, but also the idea that we're able to highlight is that we are facing the common challenges nowadays, like new technologies, leisure, the formal and informal registers of language, let's say attracting talent of Welsh speakers and Basque speakers. I mean, as linguistic communities, we're facing similar or practically the same challenges. And as I was saying, well, I just wanted to give like a big overview of the current situation of the Basque language, which is the knowledge is in average quite similar, like the 25–27% of the society could say knows the language, but that turns to a lower number when in terms of use, and we do also know that knowledge doesn't automatically mean use. So, but an optimistic or positive point is that the 12% of use in, let's say this is a public streets measurement of the 12%, is nearer from the optimal use of existing knowledge, which is the 18%. I mean, in the most optimistic number of use would be the 18%, which is not that worse. And there is another strong point that we sometimes forget, which is the motivational part, and is the Basque speakers and the Basque community, let's say, has not only a strong emotion through Basque language, but there is nowadays like, obviously an existing rule, maybe it's the same here, but an existing rule of transmitting the language, which wasn't like that like 50, 70, 80 years ago. And at the same time, the use of Basque is, normally the Basque speakers are, we could say, like very loyal to the use of language. I mean, in terms of people who don't totally master the language, but they try to do it when they could easily or easier speak in Spanish or French in this case. Well, that's just like an idea. And what I was telling previously is like our theoretical basis, and I'm not going to go very deep into this, into social linguistics now, but is to understand that language revitalization needs to act in these three axes or these three fields, which are knowledge, use, and motivation. And this is based mainly in, well, José María Sánchez Carrión is a Spanish social linguistic. This is quite an old theory, but it's very, very useful nowadays. And our methodology and our Basque plans, what we call it, are based on this. These are some communicating base cells. This is like full of liquid, let's say, in where, and this is, well, it's very complex, well, not very, it's quite complex, but I will try to explain it in a simple way, which is, and it could function, as you see, with the arrows in both directions. It's like the more motivated I am through or about the language, the more I will invest my time to know it, or I will be more interested to know or learn the language, and the more I know, the more I will use. But it's the other way around, like, well, and that's, let's say, the cultural way. I mean, when you are not born in a language, but if you learn the language or your mother tongue, whatever, the more you use it, the more you will invest in knowing or deepen the knowledge in the language, and the more motivated or attached emotionally you will be through the language, which is very, very logical. But our language plans, our Basque plans are mainly based on these 3 axes or fields. And transversally, we have the institutionalization, which is all these things need management, they do need a structure, they do need organization, the policies, whatever, which needs to be through everything. And our experience, what I said, like during these almost 30 years in the socioeconomic spheres, in private companies, in public administration, has been a mixture between these sociolinguistic bases and what is management for companies. For example, the classical PDCA cycle, which is plan, do, check, act, but our management plans have these 3 axes or fields, but at the same time, we do like action plans based on diagnosis, and then we have some actions, let's say, for investing in knowledge, but some others for use and some other for motivation. But we transversally work in planning it, doing and implementing it, then checking, assessing, evaluating it, and then taking action into improving or changing the measurements or whatever we need to do to continue. And well, our experience with football and why football, and I'm not going to explain it very much because we've seen it during all the conference, the reasons we have, how strategic it is football for a language, but the other way, how strategic is language for football as well. And maybe Fion's experience shows perfectly how language is going through everything, well, in football and in life. It's like when we are creating a community, in a football community in this case, everything, every emotion, every life experience, every feeling goes through language. And that's why football, but also a private company, also whatever, a cultural organization, whatever we're talking about its life, it's related to language. And that's a bit taking consciousness about it. And let's say, yeah, well, I will go on instead. The thing is, in our experience, we work in different levels, like first league, Spanish first league clubs, well, Basque clubs in our case, obviously. But we also work with football federation in province, regions, sphere, and with local clubs. And at the same time, we work or try to work with different subjects, which are the clubs and the steering committees, or the staff in the first, let's say, first league big clubs, because in the same way they are companies. I mean, they have hundreds of employees. And we do also work with coaches and players. And briefly, well, these are the 3 main Basque football clubs who are working now. We don't work with Osasuna and Alaves, for example, but we are now working with these 3 ones. And I would like just to highlight 3 ideas with each, because I realized during the conference that we all are trying to do the same, like same kind of initiatives, same kind of projects. But for example, in Athletic Bilbao, well, I checked the farm team's concept. Then I checked it's not said like that, but whatever is like the young learning academies, or in Euskera we say arrobia, which is in Spanish cantera. But in Athletic Bilbao, the strategic thing is being like, well, it's the most maybe Basque, the most internationally non-Basque football team, but it has a big impact in the local area, in the province of Vizcaya, in Bilbao, and so on. But we're working with them in terms of strengthening, for example, what we said, like the academy concept, like the influence of language through these people, these youngsters, through the coaches and the trainers. And there is an idea I was now like realizing and listening to other conferences, and how we can turn these coaches, for example, into not only Basque speakers, but Basque supporters, Basque active supporters, which is the big challenge. It's like, how can we strengthen the awareness, the consciousness, and somehow I think all this is about politicizing in the best way of politicizing, not about politics and arguments, but politicizing language and being conscious about how we can be, each of the speakers can be responsible for the future of the language, and somehow a coach, a trainer could be a leader, a reference, a public reference in terms of being a Welsh speaker, a Basque speaker. But I think it's not only about teaching Welsh or Basque, which is fine, obviously, but it's about teaching on sociolinguistics, let's say, but in a pedagogic way, like being aware of our responsibility and how we can transmit not only language but values towards language, and how, because in the end we're trying to transform linguistic habits, which is all the time the same. So, well, that's the main idea with the Athletic Bilbao. With Real Sociedad is the linguistic criteria's importance, which is somehow planning planning some linguistic criteria and trying to approve these criteria in the club in terms of, for example, nowadays the coaches, the youngsters' coaches don't necessarily need to be Basque speakers, for example, in Real Sociedad. And the third one in Eibar, which is not maybe that famous as the other ones, but there have been two initiatives, one of terminology dictionary that has, 5,000 copies that will be shared in the stadium for the fans and to somehow normalize some kind of expressions in Basque, of footballistic expressions, but at the same time they will do it with the schools. And they also have projects in where players in the female and male first teams share some experience in the stadium with school children, in where they do kind of an acting, like they share a story relating Basque language and football, and the school children are given what we call like the Basque language ball. They're given a ball, they take it in the classroom, and that ball is like a symbol to keep on moving the Euskera, the Basque language, to be like, to somehow these children use the Euskera in their relationship, in their classroom, in their sport trainings, in football, in whatever. So, these were the three ideas. And in the two other spheres or layers, I would say, with the football federations, the importance of coordinating and being aware of the importance of federation in terms of they are like the governance bodies of football, the institutional football, so that the more we coordinate the language planning with federations, local clubs, municipalities, the Basque government, whatever is whatever is related to language planning is strategic as well. And with local clubs, we normally have agreements with some municipalities to support the local club's language promotion, let's say. And what we do is like similar to what I was explaining with Athletic de Bilbao, like making kind of awareness sessions with trainers in terms of turning into active supporters and influencing in that way. And normally the clubs are asking or demanding tools, resources for language management, but for the transformation of linguistic habits within the youngsters and the players. And then I had some key ideas, but maybe some are repeated. It's like, this is an opportunity. Clubs are demanding us resources. They have the necessity. They are, not aware, but they are afraid of the use of languages within the youngsters in the clubs. At the same time, the importance of dialoguing. This is not about saying how they have to do things. This is more about persuading, or this is more about listening to them, not only the club members or the coaches, but even the youngsters. You have to build or make this way with them and try to come to some agreements with them. At the same time, the importance of progressiveness, like the strategies and actions must be progressive. What I said, like how important it is to turn these coaches into language activists. What we were repeating, like this must be connected to life experience, to emotions. Like we need to feel language as enjoyment and not as something formal from the school or from the government. And we need to join necessarily with life, with pleasure, with sport, with football, with whatever we like in our lives. And at the same time, there was an idea which is the idea of breathing sports, which is like breathing spaces. For example, Carnarvon, I think it's a breathing space in Wales, but it's the same idea of there are some particular sports. For example, the Basque pelota is normally mainly in Basque, but we have to inspire in these references. But at the same time, there are other cases in where some children do only have contact with Basque language within a football club. So that this is, for that person, a breathing space. And at the same time, in the difficulties and challenges, there is an opposite, not an opposite, but the safe spaces concept, which is different in terms of someone where maybe Elin was talking later in the morning, before in the morning, like about creating safer spaces in terms of feeling confident through language, and in where children will talk about their feelings about language, why they speak in Welsh or why not, why they can switch, or, I mean, spaces in where they will feel not judged and they will feel more freely speak about language, and then the trainers, the coaches will have also a better basis to talk, reflect about language, about our responsibilities. So that's another challenge we have. And the others were maybe repeated, like the limitations we have in time, resources, the volunteering and professionalization problems we have also when, for example, with local clubs and so on. Super fastly.
Oh, no, that's great.
That was it.
Well,
Yo.
I actually wrote that down to thank you, so excuse my Basque, but I'll have another go. Escuric Asco. Yeah, I know I wrote it down to say thank you as well. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting, Oihan. Looking forward to hearing more about that. Between Wales and the Basque Country, I think there's lots of similarities in the community side of it as well. So yeah, thank you very much. And last but not least, Dr Penny Miles. So mae Dr Penny Miles yn darlithydd ym Brifysgol Cymru yn arbenigo mewn gwleidyddiaeth a hunaniaethau LHD TC+, Roedd a Phêl-droed. Mae hi'n aelod o fwrdd ymgynghorol, cydraddoldeb, amrywiaeth a chynhwysiant Cymdeithas Phêl-droed. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, it's all good. Felly Penny, mae gen ti brofiad eang o pêl-droed yng Nghymru ac mewn rhannau eraill o'r byd, yn enwedig Latin America Ladin. Ti'n aelod hefyd o fwrdd ymgynghorol, cydraddoldeb, amrywiaeth a chynhwysiant Cymdeithas Phêl-droed Cymru. Mae gen ti diddordeb mewn amrywiaeth, pêl-droed, gefnogwyr a hunaniaethau mewn sawl cyd-destun rhyngwladol a chymunedol. Felly, beth mae dy ymchwil di yn dweud wrthyn ni am y rôl mae'r iaith yn cael mewn y cyd-destunau hynny, ymysg y cefnogwyr ac yn gymunedol?
Diolch, Lana.
Diolch.
So first disclaimer, sorry, I'm going to speak in English. Second disclaimer, as you mentioned, I'm by trade a Latin Americanist, and more recently I've been doing research on football in Wales. It's a slightly full circle moment. I was a fan in the 1990s, which is how this research started, and I also was one of 4 students who did Welsh A-level also back in the 1990s. But if I have to speak in Welsh, you'll be here for a very long time as I try to remember all the kind of vocabulary that you need that I don't quite have yet. So a few of those apologies. So I've been doing quite a big research project on women in football in Wales. Now that's across the men's fan base, the women's fan base and how that's developing, women working within footballing media and also within the FAW. And I've also interviewed members of the women's national team. But I'm going to talk about female fans of men's football, international men's football, which is where my research started essentially. And it started with Euro 2016. Now, there's only 7 to 10% of the away fan contingent that are women. Okay, so a very small percentage. So Ffion alluded to that. I'm one woman within 23 men. Okay, but what I'm going to talk about is the use of language. Now, rather than gender being a mechanism for inclusion within that space, because it is not, so fan identities come to the fore, national identities come to the fore, linguistic identities come to the fore, but gender is kind of put back there. So, you know, in the forms of dress, there will try and be an adherence to the kind of more jeans, top, etc. There aren't many who will kind of dress in perhaps a more feminine way. They're quite often othered for doing so if they do. But language I did 16 interviews, in-depth interviews with female fans who went to Euro 2016 and who also travel away, so they're away fans. Language became the main mechanism of inclusion for the fans, whether they were first language Welsh or second language Welsh. So I'm going to be looking at the mechanisms that are about inward identification, so how they start to kind of identify with nation through language within what is a quite bounded space. So the away fan space has lots of informal mechanisms of inclusion. Okay, so how far did you travel? Oh, I travelled for 3 days to get here. So it's a kind of, you have to have those kind of mechanisms of inclusion. But language plays a kind of key role within that. Kind of, as Ffion alluded to, it's very naturally bilingual space. So I've got a quote from one of the participants here. Such a big contingency of fans who go away are Welsh speakers, and it's one of the very few opportunities now where I get to mix with so many Welsh speakers. So for me, it's a really important part of it. My husband doesn't speak Welsh, and it's not an issue. He's never had any issues with not being a Welsh speaker. He can enjoy it just as much as I can. But it's an important part of the identity, especially of the away fans of Welsh football, definitely. So, yeah, 75% of the fans I interviewed were Welsh speakers. So, whilst that might be a higher percentage of the Welsh-speaking population within the away fan space, Welsh language is definitely more prevalent within that away space than within the natural population, which is about kind of 17% or so, they think, at the moment. As mentioned, I think IG appeared in every single interview I did, and the importance of IG as having pushed the Welsh language through football. And so one of the fans who'd gone to Euro 2016, it was her first time, she'd followed rugby, she thought football was violent, so she got there, she found out it wasn't violent. A Welsh speaker from North Wales. And at the end of the tournament, she said, oh my goodness me, the FAW are tweeting in Welsh. What a revelation. So there was this differentiation between the kind of the FAW and the WRU in terms of their very different approaches to the inclusion of Welsh language. I think that has since changed, but it did come up quite a lot in the interviews around the FAW being a much greater leader in this space. So kind of the FAW is seen as a key player in terms of fostering a sense of kind of symbolic and cultural importance of the Welsh language. Now, observationally, I've done a lot of work within press conferences as well. IG or Owen will start the press conferences always in Welsh to a mixed language audience. And so he's exposing journalists from the Times, from the Guardian, etc., to Welsh before English. And that also happens within the women's spaces. Okay, you don't get as much media coming to the women's press conferences, but more of the female players do speak Welsh than the male players. And it's been raised a couple of times today about the importance of players such as Aaron Ramsey using the Welsh language, either being interviewed in Welsh or tweeting in Welsh. A couple of the participants referred to themselves or referred to the past of them being Welsh speakers, being country bumpkins. One of them, only in their 20s, spoke of just kind of it wasn't cool to speak Welsh despite coming from a Welsh-speaking area. And so the importance, the symbolic importance that is attached to people like Ramsey doing that is really quite important. But it's also about outward recognition of nation. So language becomes this site of differentiation. So Euros was the first time in 58 years that Wales arrive at a national tournament. Okay, so language becomes this quite natural site of differentiation, obviously against England. So Alan's work is quite important for those who write around national identity, especially in the kind of UK context and sport. And our nationhood is through sport, okay, in terms of not having full political statehood. And so when you've got a national competition and you can be a Welsh other to an English other, every single person interviewed said that the recognition of Wales after the Euros, not Wales, England, as it had been known in the past. So they talked about going on holiday after the Euros. The fact that Wales had got to the semi-final meant that they were now kind of known in their own right. What was also quite important goes a bit back to what Craig was talking about earlier in terms of how language is used as signs. So the use of diolch on the T-shirts when we finally were eliminated at Euro 2016. About 5 billion people will have watched that semi-final. So the importance of linguistic recognition through that signage was really quite important. Now, my starting point was female fan inclusion within the away fan space. Of the interviews, I made an oral history film that celebrates the Euros, but it only does so through the female fan voice. And so I'm going to show a couple of clips from the film. It's called Cofio Frank, Remembering France, and it celebrates the female fan journey. So if the lovely gentleman who is sat up there could play the first clip.
Merched sydd yn fans o tîm y dynion yn cael ei anghofio weithiau. Ach ti'n meddwl am y wal goch a ti'n aml jyst yn gweld lluniau o lot o ddynion. Ond ym mhrofiad un yn wedig yw o fynd i gemau gyda'n chwiorydd, felly byddai'n mrawd i yn dueddol o fynd gyda'i ffrindiau.
Bit longer.
A byddai ni'n mynd gyda fy nwy chwaer. So mhrofiad i yw o fynd gyda merched. Ac eto, yn ferch hi'n plentyn hynna ni. So yn syth pan oedd hi'n ddigon hen, nes i ddechrau mynd â hi, felly yn sydyn oedd 4 ohono ni'n mynd gyda'i gilydd. A hefyd, mae mam wastad wedi bod yn fan mawr o dîm Phêl-droed Cymru. Mae hi'n gwybod popeth am sy'r chwaraewyr i gyd trwy'r amser. Ac unrhyw beth mae rhywbeth yn digwydd, hi yw'r cyntaf ar y WhatsApp i anfon erthygle am beth i anaf diweddara Ramsey neu rhywbeth fel yna, ti'n gwybod. So mae'n mhrofiad i o wylio Phêl-droed. Wastad wedi bod gyda merched, a wy'n credu hefyd ar gyfer fy merch a fy mab mewn ffordd, bod y ddau ohonyn nhw'n gwybod bod chwaraeon fel hyn ar gyfer pawb, a mae ei bawb allu mwynhau.
So I use Essex here because she's one of the few who does foreground her gender identity alongside her linguistic identity. She talks about female protagonism, whereas most within the interviews didn't necessarily speak about female protagonism. And quite importantly, the socialisation, so her entry point into football was through her mum. So she was then also socialising. The female socialiser is also an outlier. So what was quite interesting is a third of the participants were socialised into football fandom by their mothers. And so again, I'm quite interested in these intersections of gender, nation, etc. But what comes to the fore in this, without doubt, language was the key inclusionary mechanism for women within that away fan space. So I'll leave it there. We won't try and go to the next clip, but yeah, it's quite a long one, so I'm not going to bore you now because I can see quite a few kind of going like this. But I'd just like to say a big thanks to Craig and to Ellen for organising. Quite ironically, I met Craig through a conference out in Lisbon. So again, a kind of quite full circle moment. I didn't ever think I'd be writing about Welsh language when I did my A-level. But I've just written a chapter about how basically the FAW have used the Welsh language and put it into action, and then the receptivity of the fans within that. So, diolch yn fawr am drefnu.
Diolch yn fawr, Penny, and diolch, thank you. I'll try, won't try and say it again with that. So we have, my basque is not great. So we have about 15 minutes for questions. Mae 15 munud gyda ni am cwestiynau nawr gan y llawr. So, oes unrhyw cwestiynau os gwelwch yn dda? Yes, please.
Hi, I have a question for Oihan. There was an article that was published actually on the BBC's Welsh language news website yesterday, as it happens. It was an interview with someone, a Welshman who had written a book about the history of Athletic Bilbao, and it was the first book about the history of the club in English. Anyway, so he'd taken an interest in this and written, and the article was an interview with him, but it referenced, I think, was it last year when they won the Copa del Rey, or they won the cup for the first time in years. So the victory parade, he mentioned that there was one player who'd given a speech at the victory parade purely in Basque, and also had said during that speech about the importance of people speaking Basque and transmitting it to their children. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was quite interesting that, you know, he'd made that kind of point in the victory parade, as it were. And I was just wondering whether you have any idea as to what effect that was, or what was the reaction to that? Because it was one thing hearing that he'd done it, but actually I'm quite interested to know what the reaction would have been to something like that, and how fans generally would feel when players come out and say things like that, because it's not something you hear very often from footballers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting the... I mean, I remember, like, well, will they reach to that? But, well, yeah, the parade and the celebration of the victory was, for me, a mess. It was a big, big mess. It was like everything was in Spanish, but we have to take into consideration that we're talking about Bilbao, which is something similar to Cardiff, in where Basque is, in average, much less spoken. But the big, strong and great point was that that player who was conscious about who he was and what he was representing, and I think they were like one by one taking and speaking, and it was Spanish. It was a shame. It was like, come on. And he started, and I think the reaction was obviously, the people were super, super happy with it, but it reflects the situation we have. I mean, it reflects how hard and how difficult it is. And for example, when I'm talking about, I didn't want to deep into that because, well, when I'm talking about different spheres, and when I'm talking about Athletic de Bilbao or the academy, and that it's easier to work with youngsters, to coaches, to those levels. But sometimes, and it's difficult for us when it's difficult to reach the first team. It's like sometimes they are accepted, like it's the exception of the language policies. So that was, I think, was kind of, how could I say, like, a starting point, or to realize how bad it is, the situation sometimes, and that we have to react, and that we have to do something. Many people were very, very angry with the language management in that case, and somehow Athletic Bilbao at the same time is doing a lot in favor of language, but that was an accident, let's say, which is not, I mean, you cannot forgive it, but it's like, I don't know, it shows the complexity of it.
Bearing in mind that Athletic still take, depends on your perspective, the best players in the Basque Country, do you think it would be better and more sensible in language terms whether those players were distributed around the other main clubs in the Basque Country? For instance, Alaves, if they were allowed to have, if we were allowed to have, you know, our own fair proportion of Basque players, wouldn't that have a strong impact, a bigger impact across the area?
Do you mean the idea of Athletic, like having its own players, Basque players?
They only have Basque players. What I'm saying is, to do that, they take players from other clubs. Would they be better off allowing, instead of having an exclusive Basque policy, and having those players, those best Basque players, distributed across the other clubs in the area?
If the result was that Athletic players were all Basque speakers, I would say yes, but it's not. So I think it's not about that. It's like the problem is bigger. I mean, we're not conscious about the big challenge we have, the minoritized languages. It's not about being from here or from not being from somewhere. It's like, and it's totally proved, like people coming from other origins can learn a language, and people, well, Athletic de Bilbao is a big example of it. And I don't know Barça, but maybe it could be. I mean, there are players who come and learn the language, and players who were born here and don't do it. But maybe in Catalonia it's different. Well,
I think we'd like some of our players back as well.
Any other questions? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering about the work you do with trainers, in the clubs. So you talked about the possibility with coaches.
The coaches. Okay.
Yeah. So you talked about the possibility of turning coaches into language promoters, and I wondered whether you'd had any success with that, and how you go about raising their awareness of their responsibility towards the language.
Okay. Well, there is no magical formula. It's again complex, but it's like trying to organize. In our case, like well, it could be 2 or 3, 4, what we call them like awareness sessions, in where we measure, for example, well, we measure with the coaches. Each coach has a self-diagnose of which is their linguistic practice. For example, what do I do when I arrived to the training sessions? What do we do when we do the warming up exercises? What do we do later? Which is our, I mean, they self-diagnose themselves, then we normally agree, or they set some kind of which objective they want to reach, in which direction they want to change their linguistic habits, and then in meanwhile we do these sessions in where to talk about language awareness, how to change our linguistic habits, because we're sometimes trying to the youngsters to change their linguistic habits, but it's the same for adults. I mean, we have to be aware of if I'm being talking to my mother in Spanish all the time, how will I change it? And sometimes it's impossible. So how can I, what are we asking others when, I mean, we have to be aware of what a linguistic habit change means. So the results, and then in the end, we normally measure again, they self-diagnose themselves in what kind of, in which points they have changed, in what, I don't know, well, we have some kind of numbers, and you see if you, and they realize if they have changed or not. Then we also work in resources like what kind of situations they live with players, for example, opinions they give, and what kind of answers you can give to those opinions. It's like, I hate Euskera, I hate Basque, for example. And well, how can we manage the situation? We do those kind of things, but there is no magical formula.
And I sing to that sort of thing. So my daughter's 3.5, and as she's been growing up, I've been trying to speak bilingually, trying to do more Welsh with her. But she comes out of school, Welsh medium school, and she speaks English to me. Even though I speak Welsh back to her, she understands everything that I say, but she will speak English back to me. And I remember the day that she came out of school and she asked for help. And she said, "Gai help os gwelwch yn dda?" And my jaw dropped, because I was like, oh my goodness, this is the first time you actually spoken Welsh to me. Even though I have tried, I actually was told off by the nursery teacher for not exclusively speaking Welsh to her at home. So I was kind of like a little bit embarrassed there as well. So I was like, right, I need to be better. I need to change my language habit, right? And that's so true for community sports as well. I think that's really, really important. It kind of goes, I will ask a question, but I've got a question for the three of you. All of you mentioned about role models, so about in terms of coaches as role models, but also as the elite players as role models. I'm interested in knowing from your experiences and from your work, how important are those role models, particularly for our younger generations, to entice them, encourage them, motivate them to speak a language which is heritage to the country that they live within. So just interested to hear from the three of you about that. Should we start with Penny and then go across?
Yeah, I think really important. I think they were, when Howard James was appointed captain, they were like, oh, we now have 2 Welsh-speaking captains, and kind of that was a point of celebration. I think then the WRU did the same kind of thing. It's like, well, look, we've got all 4 now speaking Welsh. And I think that's really quite key. And in terms of when I look at Welsh women's national football, the fan base is a new fan base. It's not the same consolidated space of actors within men's football. And so in the away space, that is more an Anglo space. You've got a lot of Welsh learners in there, and Welsh is used on flags, etc. And so I think as this new fan base develops, a lot of new people coming to football, they've never watched football before, are coming to football, because we've done quite a bit of data collection with those people coming. And so I think from the outset, being able to see Carrie and Haz, etc., doing interviews through the medium of Welsh, a kind of, and Mae'r now coming to the fore, is really quite important. And as we go on to the Euros again, Owen, not just IG, will be putting Welsh within that sphere. And so I think that's huge, again, in terms of not just recognition internally, but that external recognition that is really quite important as, you know, oh yeah, Wales has its own language. Well, it's not just Wales is a country, Wales is a country and it has its own language. So just reinforcing that, I think, in external spaces, so really important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would have to agree with Penny. Touching on my work from day to day, I go around schools talking with year 10 and year 11s. I've been in 2 schools this week, and we mentioned Lily before, Lily who plays for Wrexham, so she's been with me this week, and she's obviously only 19. She studies Welsh at university in Bangor, and just seeing the reaction to like what because she's been there, and it's that they've been there. You need people that people can relate to, and it's so important. You talked about the Welsh captain. So when I do my presentation and stuff, I've got a picture of the 6. I've got Ben and Aaron, and I've got the rugby as well. Dewi I've got blank, but the 2 Jack Morgan, and then I've got Hannah and Harad as well. And I ask who they know, what they've got in common and stuff. So it's we think we know all this, but they most probably don't. Even and I go to English medium schools and Welsh medium schools and bilingual schools. So I go to I talk to all children from all kind of different backgrounds linguistically, and it is really it's so important. I do the same obviously with sport. We do the same with music, and I do the same with actors, and yeah, it's just. We know it, but they don't, and it is seeing them. I show them a video. We were talking, so there's a video of Dewi Lake and Ben Davis talking about the Welsh in their language, because Ben Davis from a Welsh-speaking household. Dewi Lake no Welsh in the family, but went to Welsh school. So it's that importance of it belongs to you. It doesn't matter how you get it, where you get it, when you get it, because as I say, when I go into some of these are 16, 15 and in English medium schools, it's getting them to realise that, but as you said, seeing them and that exposure is so important to the young people.
Yeah, definitely. Owen.
Well, nothing more to, I mean, I agree with both, maybe to link with the idea of safe space, like trying to give or share or even build together the safe space with your daughter, for example. I mean, she's 3.5, and maybe it's not the time to talk about social linguistics, or maybe yes, but adapt it. No, but maybe you have to adapt the message, and then you will have another with 5, with 7, whatever. Yeah. But it's about listening to them, how they feel, why they are feeling that, what is what they know, what is what they don't know, and try to make together like a dialogue, but together. Yeah, I mean, it's not us who know and they don't.
Yeah, and it sounds a lot around, we've spoken about quite a lot today about normalising, increasing hyder, what's hyder in English? I forgot. Confidence. Sorry. No, my brain's gone blank there as well. And just making sure that people feel comfortable using it in whichever way that they feel comfortable doing it. Making mistakes, I've made several today, and owning them as well. So we have a couple more minutes for questions. Is there one final question from the floor? Or 2? Can we have 2, please, Helen? Yeah, so we'll do first one here, please, and then second one over there. Thanks.
I'm Wayne. I work freelance as bilingual. Penny, I really enjoyed your presentation. Just a bit of background. I took my daughter for 5 years when she had no choice to go to football. And she's never seen Wales lose, so that was... She doesn't choose to come now. But, and then my brother's taken his daughters to Switzerland. In terms of the figures, so it was 1 in 17 in France. Likely to be a lot more in Switzerland, maybe half and half. But should we be celebrating that, or should we be asking questions? Or obviously, it's the time to celebrate, but I was thinking more about the statistics and the academic analysis of those kind of figures.
It'll be really interesting to see. It's a kind of watch this space at the moment. So normally when we travel away, so I take my notebook, and normally there's like about 10 people, and you go, all right, that's quite easy, you know, 6 men, 4 women. Normally, at the last match in Italy, it was 2/3 men. So because of the kind of success of men's Wales away, quite a lot of those now come to women's Wales away, just because of the enjoyment of going away. It's slightly different, it's more kind of familiar. But with the Irish match, for the first time, we had a lot of young groups of women coming for the first time that we'd never seen before, which was brilliant. And I think it will be really interesting to see who comes out to Switzerland, because that will be the kind of push. When we went to Switzerland last time, when we were trying to qualify for the World Cup, that was the most women and families I've seen. There were 50 fans went out in total to Switzerland. I go and I take notes, I count all these people, I'm a bit sad, and take photos and post them on social media so we say, come along, come along. But yeah, there were 50 in Switzerland, and that was a bit of a sea change as well. But then it kind of reverted to kind of normal, where there's just about 20 of us, and, you know, a significant proportion are men. But those men play a key role in helping women develop confidence if they've never travelled before. When you've got a new growing fan base, when they haven't travelled away, you're travelling as a woman. Often, a lot of us travel as lone women. Safety is a huge thing. If you've kind of never just got on a plane and then just landed in some foreign land where you don't speak the language. And so they help build confidence. They kind of, you know, take them through the steps, or they might buy tickets for them and take them along with them. And so I think we don't know what the makeup of our fan base will be. I think we will have a greater participation of men than other nations, just because partly it's a small nation, fans want to celebrate, male fans as much as female fans want to celebrate Wales on the stage. But I think what I'm most interested in is seeing how many of these kind of young women new to football, or not just young women, older women as well. You know, a lot of women have just started playing football kind of my age because they never could before, whereas now, thanks to kind of FAW structures, we can. So it's kind of watch this space. I'm looking forward to doing interviews again to see who comes along. Yeah, so sorry, but statistically, yeah, again, I don't know. But I'm more of a qual kind of observation and in-depth kind of than a stats, but thank you for the question.
Yeah, so I was just thinking how dependent things are on the success on the field. So the rise of the link between the Welsh language and the football team has coincided with success on the field. But say if things did start to go the other way in terms of results, I'm guessing less fans would start to go to watch Wales, home and away. So is there a risk that there's too much of a dependency on the success on the field? Or is this something that we can continue with even if results started to go the other way?
Yeah, so success, we see, I don't know if tomorrow's game against Kazakhstan, it wasn't sold out, I don't know if it is, so there's not, I don't think it is it? So obviously, yeah, mae angen llwyddiant, you need success to build that, that support. But what we maybe should be thinking about is, obviously national teams, but obviously football underneath the national teams as well, as Sid, two languages, and how we can get more Welsh into our top level women's and men's, and there is obviously a lot of Welsh around there. As in, that in sort of stuff, Sgôr, the TV programme which broadcasts live games and highlights and stuff, is important that we've got like Welsh at every level. So when obviously we all want success, but as in we've seen it in the last couple of years, so it hasn't been 2016 all, so we've been down and then we didn't qualify for 2018 and we've been up, but it does help massively. So I'm gonna help it a lot. And as I said, it's going to be interesting now with the women because this is kind of the first real success. We've actually gotten to a tournament, and how I'm really interested to see how's that going to do. But as you said, because there are more Welsh, there's quite a few of them that speaks Welsh as well. So is that going to help get that role models and who we've got? Again, we've been really lucky to have Anna Ramsey, speaks Welsh, so that's been helpful as well. So who have we got coming through who also speaks Welsh? So a lot of things, I think. But I think, we've gotten very far, but at all levels. So that it doesn't just depend on national team success.
Yeah.
Thanks very much to the three members of the panel and also for your questions.